There was an article that was purported to have been written by her in one of the magazine, one of the Star or whatever those terrible things are, in which she made certain assertions and accusations that none of us ever believed a word of it.
Television has never seen a betrayal quite like this. Happy Days gave America one of the most emotional farewells in TV history, only for ABC to destroy it overnight and leave the cast trapped in the wreckage. In 1984, the show was meant to close with Tom Bosley's heartfelt goodbye, a moment of pure closure after 11 seasons with the Cunningham family. But that blunder from ABC left fans heartbroken and the legacy fractured. How did it all go wrong? And how did 5 forgotten episodes rise from the grave to kill a classic? Secret fight that almost destroyed Happy Days. Ron Howard was ready to walk away from Happy Days. By the late 1970s, the fresh-faced actor who had carried the sitcom since 1974 dropped an ultimatum that rattled ABC's executive offices. It had nothing to do with salary disputes or creative notes. It came down to 2 words the network wanted to slip into the show's title. By its 3rd season, Happy Days had turned into a cultural powerhouse. Families tuned in weekly, advertisers lined up, and cast members became household names. But it wasn't Richie Cunningham, the all-American teenager played by Howard, who was driving the frenzy. It was Arthur Fonzarelli. Henry Winkler's Fonzie, with his leather jacket, motorcycle and signature, i.e., had stolen the spotlight. He started as a supporting character but quickly became a phenomenon. Kids mimicked his style, toy stores couldn't keep Fonzie merchandise on the shelves, and ratings showed audiences were glued to his every scene. That's when ABC executives floated an idea: rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. On paper it looked like smart branding. In practice, it risked rewriting the DNA of the series. For Ron Howard, it was more than just a title tweak, it was a personal insult. He had built Richie Cunningham into one of television's most recognizable characters, anchoring the show's heart and narrative. Being pushed into second place in the very series he helped launch felt like a professional betrayal. In the mid-1970s, tensions began to simmer behind the scenes of Happy Days. Ron Howard, who had been America's clean-cut Richie Cunningham since the pilot, suddenly found himself facing a challenge that could have rewritten television history. As Henry Winkler's Fonzie exploded in popularity, ABC executives floated the idea of renaming the show Fonzie's Happy Days. On paper it looked like a marketing win. In reality, it threatened to undermine everything that made the sitcom work. In a tense meeting with creator Gary Marshall and the network brass, Howard didn't hesitate. He told them flatly, if the title changed he was out. No bargaining, no second thoughts. This was more than pride, it was about protecting the integrity of the show. At just 21 years old, Howard recognized a truth the executives ignored: Happy Days wasn't a one-man act. Fonzie's cool only shone because it was balanced against Richie's everyman charm, Marion's warmth, and the rest of the Cunningham family. Industry insiders were stunned. Young actors didn't defy the network machine, especially not over something as small as a title. Yet Howard's stand forced ABC to back down, preserving Happy Days as the ensemble classic fans still remember today. The twist? Henry Winkler, the man at the center of the debate, sided with Howard. He told executives flat out, "Why fix it if it's not broken? My success depends on the ensemble I'm in." Fonzie might have been the breakout star, but Winkler knew the magic only worked because of the group dynamic. That solidarity killed the title change. Gary Marshall ultimately backed his actors and kept Happy Days as it was. But the confrontation left scars. Howard began thinking seriously about leaving acting to pursue directing, a career move that would eventually make him one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. Looking back, this battle over 2 words foreshadowed deeper issues inside ABC. The same executives who nearly lost their leading man to a branding decision would later mishandle the show's scheduling and finale, turning what could have been a perfect goodbye into one of television's strangest send-offs. This moment wasn't just about egos. It exposed the constant tug-of-war between creativity and corporate profit that shaped television for decades. To the network, Fonzie was a cash cow. To the cast and creators, he was a character who only thrived in the world they had carefully built together. But Howard's ultimatum was only one side of the story. When the spotlight eventually dimmed, it was Henry Winkler, not Ron Howard, who faced the deepest struggle. Away from the cheers, catchphrases and leather jacket, the man behind television's coolest character was carrying a weight no one in the audience ever imagined. What pain was Winkler hiding beneath Fonzie's perfect smile? Untold pain behind the Fonz's cool smile. Henry Winkler was broke when he auditioned for Happy Days. In 1973, the actor who would later become the face of American cool arrived in Hollywood with barely a month's rent saved. He had left New York after years of scraping by in the theater, where steady work was rare and paychecks were small. Winkler admitted later that his finances were dire. He wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was chasing survival. The irony is striking because the man who would soon play Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, the most confident character on television, was terrified as he walked into that audition room. He read for the role of a leather-jacketed biker who was originally written as comic relief. Somehow, against the odds, he got the part. That single moment changed not just his life, but also the course of television history. By the third season of Happy Days, television had a new king, and his name was Arthur Fonzarelli. What began as a minor supporting role, written for just a handful of lines each week, exploded into a cultural phenomenon. The Fonz wasn't just a character. He became a national obsession. Kids across America mimicked his IE catchphrase in school hallways, barbers saw boys asking for his slicked-back hairstyle, and toy stores couldn't keep Fonzie lunchboxes, t-shirts, and action figures on their shelves. Henry Winkler, who had been a struggling stage actor before landing the part, suddenly found himself one of the most famous faces in America. He graced magazine covers, appeared on talk shows, and received more fan mail than the rest of the cast combined. Audiences didn't just like the Fonz, they tuned in every week specifically to see what he would do next. By 1976, Fonzie was being written into nearly every storyline, and producers even moved his character into the Cunningham household to give him more screen time. Within just 2 years, Henry Winkler had gone from an unknown actor to a pop culture icon, reshaping Happy Days and television itself forever. But fame came with a hidden cost. For more than a decade, Winkler was the Fonz. The leather jacket, the motorcycle, the slicked back hair, these weren't just character details. They became part of his identity. He poured himself so completely into the role that the line between Henry Winkler and Arthur Fonzarelli started to blur. When Happy Days ended in 1984 after 11 seasons, Winkler was unprepared for what came next. He later described the end of the show as a sting, but that word hardly captured the depth of his struggle. It felt like losing a family member. For 10 years he had lived as the Fonz, and suddenly the cameras went dark. The confidence disappeared with the role, leaving him face to face with an identity crisis. It wasn't just about finding the next job. It was about answering a scarier question. Who was Henry Winkler without the Fonz? For over a decade, the world had only seen him through that lens. Casting directors, audiences, and even Hollywood itself couldn't separate the actor from the character. Typecasting hit him hard. He was grateful for the role that made him famous, but at the same time he felt trapped by it. The anxiety was crushing. Winkler admitted that he feared slipping back into the financial struggles that haunted him before Happy Days. He had achieved everything actors dream about: fame, wealth, and cultural immortality, but inside he felt the same insecurity he carried when he arrived in California with only a few dollars to his name. Hollywood wasn't making it any easier. The Fonz had become more than just a role, it was an American symbol of cool. Audiences didn't want to see Henry Winkler as a lawyer, a doctor, or a teacher. They wanted the Fonz. Breaking free from that image seemed almost impossible. For years, Winkler struggled with rejection and self-doubt. He still loved the character that made him famous, but he feared that his career had ended the moment Happy Days did. It was an emotional weight he carried privately, even as the public still saw him as the man who could make jukeboxes play with a snap of his fingers. But Henry Winkler didn't disappear. Slowly he reinvented himself. In the 1980s, when acting roles dried up, he turned to directing, working behind the camera on projects like MacGyver and Cop and a Half. Later, he began to rebuild his acting career with fresh roles that proved his range, like his turn as Principal Himbry in Scream and his Emmy-nominated role in Arrested Development. Decades later, his performance in HBO's Barry finally earned him the recognition he had long craved, winning him an Emmy in 2018. Still, Winkler has been open about how painful the post-Happy Days years were. He admitted in interviews that the emotional scars stayed with him long after the show ended. Fame had given him everything he dreamed of, but it also nearly took away his sense of self. While Henry Winkler was battling his own private demons, ABC executives were preparing a move that would spark an even bigger crisis. What rule did they dare to break? The 1984 Olympics ruined Happy Days. February 1984 was supposed to be a proud moment for ABC. The network had secured exclusive coverage of the Winter Olympics in Sarajevo, a global event that promised huge ratings, prestige, and millions in advertising revenue. But behind the excitement, ABC made one of the most damaging scheduling mistakes in television history. A decision so disastrous, it forever changed how networks handled finales, programming conflicts, and even the relationship between viewers and the stories they loved. This is the forgotten disaster that turned Happy Days, one of America's most beloved sitcoms, into the first zombie series on television. At first, it looked like a routine scheduling problem. The Sarajevo Games ran from February 8 to February 19, 1984. ABC, as the rights holder, cleared its primetime slots for nightly coverage of figure skating, skiing, and ice hockey. This meant that several shows were pushed out of their usual time slots, including Happy Days, which was already in its final season after an 11-year run. The displaced episodes weren't random filler. They were supposed to air in February as part of the show's final stretch leading up to its big goodbye. ABC's executives were faced with a choice: delay the finale until summer to make sure every episode aired in order, or stick to their May finale schedule and figure out what to do with the leftover episodes later.